Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
Maybe we can start. So it's my pleasure to welcome David Hernandez from École Normale Supérieure, who will tell us about G models on elliptic curves and quantum groups.
Okay, so thank you very much. And, so I'm very glad to participate to this program, and thank you for the invitation to talk to this seminar. So the subject of this talk is related to some representation theory of quantum groups, more precisely quantum affine algebras, and we will see some parametrization of equivalence classes of representation by geometric objects, which are G bundles and elliptic curves. So first I should say that this is a joint work with Corrado de Concini and Colliard et Chipettine. So let me start to define. Let me start with starting to define the structures that we will study. So we start with some finite dimensional complex Lie algebra G. So the usual object. And so there are two classes of algebras which are kind of generalization of this. So to start with, we can consider a quantum group, UQ of G, which is a deformation of the enveloping algebra of G, quantum group. So here Q is some complex number, which is a quantization parameter. And so we can define also Kac-Moody algebra, which is some infinite dimensional analog of G. So G hat, Kac-Moody algebra. So in this case, it will be affine. Okay, so it is infinite dimensional, and it is a generalization of G in the sense that it has a presentation by generators and relation, which is analog to the usual Serre presentation of Lie algebra, except that we change the Cartan matrix, which is not necessarily of finite type. So this is a well-known theory. And then what we can do is to consider the two generalizations at the same time, and we get what is called a quantum affine Kac-Moody algebra, so UQ of G hat, which is a quantum affine algebra. And if we look at this picture, we see that there are two ways to look at this algebra. So first, we can look at it as a quantization of the enveloping algebra of this Lie algebra. Okay, so it's the same kind of process as we did to define this UQ of G. Or we can look at it directly as an affinization of a quantum group of finite type. So this is a kind of a commutative diagram. And in fact, precisely, it corresponds to two presentations of this algebra. So it can be defined in two different ways, which are equivalent. And there is a presentation which is analog to the Drinfeld-Jimbo presentation of a quantum group, and another presentation which corresponds to this affinization, which is called the Drinfeld presentation of the algebra. Okay, so this is a kind of, so this row is the Drinfeld presentation. So in this talk, we will be interested in some representation of this UQ of G hat. Okay, so it is known that for quantum groups, there is an important choice, which is the quantization parameter, Q. And there are two cases when Q is a root of unity. So root of 1, and when Q is generic. So generic here means that it is not a root of unity. And the representation theory is very different in these two cases. Okay, so we have very different representation theory. Okay, so let's say it's case B. Case A. So in the case B, so when Q is generic, And so first so I will give some reminders of the classical theory so that we can compare with the new results for quantum affine algebra. So first I will remind some results for UQ of G. Okay, so this is of finite type. By finite type, I mean that G is finite dimensional. Okay, so in this case, when Q is generic, it is a very classical result now that the representation theory is very analog to the representation theory of G. So that is to say, the category of finite dimensional representation is semi-simple. We have a parametrization of simple representation by dominant monomials, as for usual Lie theory. And in fact, the character formulas also are the same as for usual quantum groups. Okay, so now when Q is the root of unities, so it is also now well known that everything changed. So in this talk, I consider the specialization of Katz de Concini, at root of unities, that is to say the version of the algebra with the big center. So in this case, so there is a big center, so large center. Okay. See? So here epsilon is a notation for the root of unity. Q is specialized to this root of unity epsilon. And the algebra is finite over its center. Okay, and so what is interesting also is that there is a subalgebra of the center, a large commutative subalgebra, which is a Hopf subalgebra. Okay, which is so commutative. The algebra is also finite over this subalgebra. And so we can consider the spectral parameter map. So spectral. We can consider the, central character. Map. So which is a map from the set of simple representation of this quantum group at root of unity to the dual of the center. Okay, and so the point is that so this is usually denoted by spec. So the point is that this map has very good properties. So first it is surjective. All fibers are finite. Okay, and it is in fact a bijection on a dense open Zariski subset of this. Okay, so this is a classical result for these quantum groups, finite type quantum groups. Moreover, there is geometric realization. So geometric realization of the epsilon. Okay, as some ring on function related to the classical Lie group. Okay, so related to G, which is a classical Lie group. So I think it's an interesting picture because we have all these quantum groups, and then here the geometry of the representation theory is related to the classical Lie group. And so there is a parametrization of equivalence classes of representation with the same central parameter by conjugacy classes in G, and which are also related to symplectic leaves, because we have some Poisson structure of G. So I do not give the details now because I will repeat the picture for quantum affine algebra. Okay. So now let's look at the affine picture. So UQ G hat. So if we look at, so there is a huge, there are many papers on the case, on the generic case when Q is generic. So there are, in fact, two kinds of representations in this case. There are some highest weight representations, which are in this case not finite dimensional, but integrable, but which are really the analog of the finite dimensional representation of this algebra. But there are also some finite dimensional representations, which are studied in the Drinfeld presentation of this UQG hat. Okay, so in the case B, there are two kinds. So there is a category O and some integrable representation. And there are also some finite dimensional representation. Okay, and in this case, there is a parametrization by what are called the Drinfeld polynomials. Okay, so now let's look at the root of unity. So which is really what we will study here. And so the picture is not as clear as we have in the finite case. So first, so there is a center. Okay. Center. So this center is also very large, but it is not as large as we wish because the algebra is not finite over its center. So it's not as a situation which is as good as in the finite case, but it has been computed by Beck and Katz. So they computed explicitly the center. There is so we know generators. It is some polynomial algebras which some generated which are inverted, and but with infinite numbers of generators. Okay. It is in the center here. It is not a loop here. What is your question?
It is not critical. What you are saying.
No, up to now the center is not specialized now.
Not specialized.
So here in particular, so this is, I was about to say this, we have in particular the center element, which is always central because it is a central element also when it is not a root of unity, but it is also in the center, of course. And but there are many other elements at root of unity. Okay. So, I don't know. Ah, okay. Thank you. There are many of them. So in fact, this central element is very important. It is important because if we look at finite dimensional representations of this algebra, then it is known that the action of this central element, so this is a central element. I forgot to say that it's already here, in fact. There is C, which is a central element which corresponds to the central extension. Okay, because we know that a finite algebra can be realized as a central extension, so some extension of a loop algebra, and in particular there is this element, which is also in this algebra. So when we look at a finite dimensional representation, the action of this central element is trivial, also at root of unity. So C, action of C is trivial. Okay. So this has been studied by Beck and Katz in their paper. Okay, so they studied the picture for these finite dimensional representations. So what we do in our work is to study what happens when C is not trivial. C generic. Okay, so the quantization parameter is the root of unity, but the central element is generic. So in this situation, we have no finite dimensional representations. But so what's in fact this is the aim of this talk is to explain why this situation I think is also interesting and what we have to do to deal with this situation. So we have no finite dimensional representation, but there are still many representations, in particular these integrable representations, which are analogues of the finite dimensional representations in the case of usual quantum groups. So so there are in fact 3 points that I would like to address. So first, I said that in this picture, the geometric realization of this commutative Hopf subalgebra is related to this classical D group. So we have to understand what should be the analog of this D group. In fact, so and it appears that we have a proposal in this picture. So of course it should be a loop group, but there are many versions of loop groups. So we propose a version of loop group which we call analytic loop group. So I will explain what it is, but the important point for us is that this group will have a Riemann-Hilbert factorization. Okay. With a Riemann-Hilbert factorization. So I will explain what I mean. So the second point, when we have defined the group with the topology and the infinite dimensional D group structure, then in fact it provides a geometric realization of this infinitely generated center. So it gives a geometric realization of the epsilon. Geometric realization as a Hopf-Poisson algebra, because it's more than an algebra. You had the Hopf algebra structure and also a Poisson structure which comes from the generic case. And then by using this, so we can do the analog of this picture, and then we get a parametrization of central character maps by G-bundles on an elliptic curve. So parametrization of central characters. Okay, so I will explain also how we get this. And these central characters, they correspond to equivalence classes of representation up to a covering. Okay, it's not exactly as good as here because here this is not finite dimensional over this. So there is additional covering, but still we can say something. Okay, so that's the plan for this. Okay, so let's start with this loop group. So this loop group. So the first question is why we do not use usual notion of loop groups. So what are the usual notion of loop groups? So there is still the formal loop group. Okay, so here G, G is usual Lie group. Usual Lie group, finite dimensional Lie group. And we want to consider some loop group of G. So, and the formal loop group is G of Z. So this is a very good object from the point of view of algebraic geometry. For example, in geometric Lagrange, it's a very important object, but also for other applications. But so there are two reasons why we cannot use it. So the first reason is that we do not have Riemann-Hilbert factorization in the following sense: is that this part of this group is not a subgroup. For example, for SL2 or GL2, it means that the coefficients are some Lorentz series. They are point. Oh, it's Z.
And then when you write single bracket G inverse, you mean just the negative?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So
That
this
means
is
finite polynomials in Z.
exactly, which are contained, of course, in
I don't know, it's a group schema. So it's the set of points of G of this ring. So it's a group. What do you mean that it's not a group?
It's a group, but not for the same structure. Of itself, it's a group, but it's not a subgroup of this group. What I mean is very elementary. If you look at this, the case of GL1, where G is a C star, so we have this C of Z, okay, and the elements which are not equal to 0. And then you can consider of the polynomials in Z minus 1 with coefficient in C. And of course, it's not a subgroup for the structure that we have. Just it's not very deep, just very elementary observation. So something else which is a problem for us is that it does not contain some exponentials of Laurent polynomials. Okay, so this is, for example, it is this case, so does not contain.
So I still don't understand what this G of Z inverse means. So you don't mean invertible. So if G were G of N, you don't mean invertible matrices whose entries are polynomials in Z. What do you mean by that?
Yes, this is so.
So if it's
this is
invertible
the case.
matrices,
This is the case of GL1.
but if it's invertible matrices, then I must take.
So I think it takes then
Invertible.
invertible in the formal ring, in the formal series.
Yes, it is invertible in the formal series. Yeah, this is one.
Coefficient
Oh, I
subclass.
see.
Maybe
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I should have said. So something also which is which will be important for us is to have a group which contains some, for example, for the case of GL1, exponential of Laurent polynomials. Okay, for applications it's important, and so we do not have, does not contain let's say exponential of P of Z. P of Z is a Laurent polynomial. Okay, so if we have in mind in this case, it's clear. Okay. So these are the two reasons why we do not work with this group. So we could also use loop group, let's say the smooth loop group, for example. Or continuous loop group, like in the book of Presley and Seagal, which is a group of a smooth map F from S1 to G. Okay? Smooth or continuous, well, depends on the property that we want to use. So this is not enough for us because we want to be able to change the variable. Okay, and so this is not stable for Z, which is changed to, let's say, lambda Z, if lambda is not equal to 1. Okay, so this is also. Okay, so if we look at this, so there is natural definition is, in fact, to replace this group by using some germs of holomorphic maps. Okay, so we define, so LG, so which is this analytic loop group. We should change this. Is the group of germs of holomorphic maps on the pointer disk to G. Okay, but we allow to have some singularity, or maybe some essential singularity at 0. Okay, so may have essential singularity at 0. So this is just a proposal, but for what we have to do, we can do something with this group.
So why do you take D star and not C star?
Oh, it's just, it is a germ, so it's defined locally around 0.
That's what it indicates.
Yeah, just, yes, I could work, I could write C star, but the point is that it's not necessarily defined on C. Okay. Okay, so we look at this group and we define topology and the infinite dimensional Lie group structure on this group. So we have to be a bit careful because it's infinite. Everything is infinite. And then we have this Riemann-Hilbert factorization, so which is an easy consequence of the Birkhoff decomposition. So for F in LG, we have decomposition, which is F plus D F minus, okay, where F plus is so in what is called G plus. So what is G plus? It is a group of germs of holomorphic map which are defined as 0. Okay. So germ group of germs of holomorphic map defined at 0. Then F minus is in G minus. So this is not a germ. This G minus is a group of map which are defined everywhere except at 0. Okay, so group of holomorphic maps. So from P1 of C, where there is no 0, to a G. Okay. And what is D? D is just one parameter subgroup of, let's say, D, which is B plus intersected with B minus, where B plus and B minus are some opposite Borel of G. Okay. And moreover, we can, this decomposition is unique if we impose some condition on F minus, which is that the value at the infinity should be equal to 1. So this is Riemann-Hilbert factorization in the general sense of this Riemann-Hilbert problem, where you have some, let's say, for example, a circle we call S1, and there is a map defined on the circle, and we want to decompose it as a product of a map which can be extended inside and a map which can be extended outside. Okay, and this is exactly what is here, where F plus is extended inside and F minus outside. So in some sense, we have this. So S1, as it is a germ, S1 is a small circle, around 0. This is a very classical problem. We have F, which is defined here, and then F plus is defined inside, and F minus is defined outside. Okay, so this is Riemann-Hilbert factorization. As I told, it is a consequence of this problem, which is solved by Birkhoff for loops on the circle, which is a very old theorem. Okay. So now we have this, in fact, and this decomposition will give us the definition of a Manin triple corresponding to this loop group. This will give, so this theorem, this gives a motivation, and also at some point we use it to define a Manin triple. So to do it, first we extend a bit this group. So we consider LG tilde, no, let's say LG hat, which is an extension of LG. So what we do, we first, so this part is very analog to what we do usually with loop groups. So first we consider a central extension. So we have to be a bit careful about the topology, because the central extension is so we have to be careful. It's not just a direct product topology. And then we add the analog of the derivation element. So in some sense, it's, as a group, we just add two elements here. We can think about it like this. Okay. And so I can yes, central extension. Plus analog of central element. So I do not give all details. If you want, I can explain later, or it's written in the paper. Yes, of course. So then we define 3 groups, which will be the Manin triple. So first we have G tilde, which is just a product of 2 copies of LG hat. So this is analog to what is done for quantum groups of finite type. Then we look at K, which is a subgroup of G tilde, which is just a diagonal subgroup. Okay, diagonal. Subgroup. And so what is interesting is this H, so which is the third one. So it is a subgroup of G tilde, subgroup of elements of the form. So this is where this factorization is interesting for this, because it gives the decomposition of the elements that we will use to define this dual subgroup here. So of elements of the form, so we have G, lambda, mu. So this lambda and mu are for the extensions, coordinates of the extensions. H, lambda minus 1, mu minus 1. Okay, where G is in the positive part, is in G plus, and H is in G minus. And there are some conditions, but I do not write it. But the idea is just to look at the subgroups where we put on one side the element of G plus, on the other side the element of G minus, and K is a diagonal subgroup. And so this is a Manin triple. So it means that if we look at the corresponding Lie algebras, we can define some invariant bilinear form, so with good properties relatively to this sub-Lie algebra of this. Okay. So this is a well-known situation. And what is interesting is that in this case, we can define some Poisson brackets if we have some coordinates of H. And so what we do, so we consider, so C of H, which is an algebra generated by so certain coordinates of H that we define. Okay, so we do not look, so as this is a infinitely group, it's not the coordinate ring, but we give the coordinates, so it's still very big. Almost everything is in this algebra. And by construction, we get a Hopf-Poisson structure on this. So by construction, because we have all this Manin business, by construction, this C of H is a, I don't know, Hopf-Poisson or Poisson-Hopf. So Hopf-Poisson algebra. So before I give the theorem, let me give an example. Well, maybe you can see what we do more clearly. Example. In fact, the first non-trivial case is GL1. Which is already a non-trivial for this. So H contains elements of the following form. We have some exponential of h plus lambda mu and exponential of h minus lambda minus 1 mu minus 1, where lambda and mu are in C star, and h plus and h minus have values in C. Okay, but this is, so if you follow the definition, this is gems of holomorphic map around 0, and this is holomorphic map which is defined on the Riemann sphere except on 0. And so what are the coordinates? So we take lambda, mu, and the Fourier coefficients of h plus and h minus. So hm, for example, for m strictly positive, this is Fourier coefficients of h plus. hm, so if m is negative, this is for h minus, and then there is a k which is just exponential of h plus of 0. And then C of h is just the algebra where there is lambda plus minus 1, mu plus minus 1, hm, and k. K also can be inverted, where m is in Z and is not equal to 0. So we have this commutative algebra with infinite set of generators, and there is Poisson brackets that we can compute very explicitly. From the construction. And we get, so the bracket of hm and hm prime is equal to exponential m, so I think it's mu to the m minus u m minus delta m minus m prime, and hm lambda, which is m. Okay, so just to give you some, with this picture, we can do some explicit things. And if you look at this, these are exactly, this corresponds to the relation in the quantum Heisenberg algebra. So relations of quantum Heisenberg algebra. So which is the quantum group for GL1 hat. Okay, so I just said, but just by looking some maps from C to C star, and by looking at the Fourier coefficients, and by using this construction, we get a relation of this form, which are just the relation of the quantum affine algebra associated with GL1. And so this is what we expect, in fact. This just means that this CH is the center of this at root of unity. In fact, what we prove is that this is general for all the algebras. So this was so this is theorem 1, no, theorem 2. So the theorem 2 is that C of H is isomorphic to the center, the epsilon of G hat. And this is an isomorphism of not only of algebra, but as Poisson algebras. Okay, here the the Poisson brackets come from the bracket of the quantum group. Then when we put a Q at root of unity, the semi-classical limit gives the bracket. So this is exactly the situation that we have here. Okay, so of course we could expect this result, this work from this.
Is it possible to write the antipode?
Yes, we did it to prove the statement. But, I do not have the formula in mind now. But probably HM is sent to H minus M. I have to check this. Okay, so now the next step is to use this to do the analog picture as the pictures that we have for in the finite dimensional case. So if you remember the pictures that I described at the beginning, what are important, in fact, are the symplectic leaves of H, and they correspond to some conjugacy classes in the usual group in G. So in fact, what will be relevant here will be some conjugacy classes. So now in fact, we go from this geometric picture to the algebraic picture. Conjugacy classes in this group LG hat. Okay. So this is when we have this group and these three loop groups in this Manin triple situation, we know that this geometric decomposition of the Poisson Lie group is given by this algebraic structure, which are the conjugacy classes. So this is a general statement. And in fact, these conjugacy classes in this group coincide with twisted conjugacy classes in the loop group, because we have the central element and the derivation extension. So they coincide with twisted conjugacy classes in LG. So what does it mean, twisted conjugacy classes? It means the following. So if we have G and F, so G and F are elements in LG. So they are maps. They depend on a parameter. And by definition, this is the action of G on F is G, Z, C minus 1, F of Z, G of Z. Okay, so this is twisted because instead of usual conjugation, the first element is changed, and we have this change of variable here. Okay, and if you remember at the beginning, I said that we cannot use usual loop group which is defined on the circle because we need to change the circle. In fact, we need to change the variable, and this is because of this. Okay. In fact, this picture does not work if we cannot do this. So, and here C is the value of the central element. It is the level. Okay. And this kind of situation has been studied already because people interested in a Q difference equation, for example, it's important for us to look at this because the equivalent classes for this relation corresponds to isomorphism classes of Q difference equations. So that's why the people studied this kind of twisted conjugacy classes. And so what we will use is a theorem of Louis Jenga. And this theorem gives parametrization of these classes. So in fact, the parametrization, so there is bijection. between a twisted conjugacy classes of, so in this case, the case of this theorem, these are holomorphic classes. So in this case, it does not use a loop group, these analytic loop groups, but a subgroup, which is a group of holomorphic maps from C star to G, which is a subgroup. And so this is in a bijection with holomorphic, so isomorphism classes of holomorphic G models on E, which is the elliptic curve with a module corresponding to this C. So it's an elliptic curve with, so it's C star. Okay. So this is what is used in the Q-difference equation theory, this kind of statement. But in Q-difference, the module of the elliptic curve is really the quantum parameter Q. But in our case, this is not the elliptic curve corresponding to Q, but to the central element. So it is a really affine situation. Okay. So as a consequence of all this, what we get is the following. So, in fact, so these central characters so which are holomorphic, which corresponds to this holomorphic loops, are in bijection with this geometric object. And this, up to a covering, corresponds to equivalence classes of simple representations of this algebra at root of unity. Okay, so in fact, this parametrization seems to be the relevant geometric object to understand this. So of course, what I wrote here is for holomorphic loops. It's because this theorem was proof for holomorphic loops, but probably can be extended. But we can for more general loops, but we have not done it yet. So a natural question which should be asked is to which representations corresponds this holomorphic loop? What does it mean? So it just means that, so if we look at the generators of this quantum affine algebra, so we have this EI, so we go back to the Drinfeld-Jimbo generators, Ki, so here I is between 0 and n. So I equal, so between 1 and n, it corresponds, these are generators of the finite type quantum groups. And the 0 node is the additional affine node. And these conditions mean that the action of E0 is nilpotent. These are the representation corresponding to this. So you could ask, okay, it is a very strong, so it is a condition which is explicit, but which is very strong. Still, it means we do not require that the action of other generators is nilpotent. So in particular, when we look at the corresponding representation, the sub-representation for the quantum group of finite type, U epsilon of G, are not highest weight representation. So we have the full complexity of this representation theory of truth of unity in these representations. But as the action of E0 is nilpotent, we have a natural grading on representation. And in particular, we can define analogs of baby Verma modules, which will be infinite dimensional in this case, in this picture. And so, this is in our paper, but in the future, what we want to do is to understand in more detail this category. And there are several natural questions. For example, we expect that the graded characters, okay, so these representations are infinite dimensionals, and the weight spaces may be also infinite dimensional. But if the action of E0 is nilpotent, we have a grading. And so we can define some graded characters, so which should be the same for representation which are equivalent in this sense. And so there are other questions, for example, to understand the graded branching rules to the finite quantum group of finite type. And there are several cases where we have formulas, and in some cases conjectural formulas. Okay, so I just wanted to say that what I explained is just the starting point of the picture, I think, where we have some the geometric context to parameterize these representations. And the next step will be to understand them in more details. So, okay, so I will stop here.
Yeah. So, as you say, H is not a schema, but so what is the relation between the spectrum of C of H and H in general?
The spectrum of what? Of
C of H, which is a scheme.
Of this sub, so you look at this coordinate ring that we use, then you look at the corresponding scheme, the spectrum, and you want to compare it with H. I don't know a priori what to say, but it should be bigger, I think, a priori. But
Scheme should be bigger.
yeah, but yeah, because here, in this ring, we avoid all kind of completion of coordinates. So, so this is a good question. We did not consider it. There was yes.
Take Q as 1, then there are a few very distinguished representations. Basic representation and the fundamental representations. Is there some Q deformation of this finite number of distinguished representations?
Yes, so when Q is equal to, so by fundamental representation, I guess you mean fundamental in the sense of the usual triangular decomposition. So
You find them in fermion-Fock space.
Yeah. So exactly, so this is something that we want to. So for example, the representation of the Fock space should appear in this picture. So in this case, the action of E0 is nilpotent because this representation are highest weight. So these are representations which are really in this holomorphic picture.
So you expect to
Yes,
find them.
yes, clearly.
But they're not yet studied. They haven't
No.
yet. Okay.
There should be also explicit presentation with the Fock space presentation also. So in this picture, this was a bit more general because a priori the action of E0 was not nilpotent. But for this more precise result at the end, the representation you talked about, yes, there are here.
Somehow I missed the connection between the epsilon and the C, and where was it when you made the minor?
So the epsilon is a Q. The epsilon is a specialization of Q at the root of unity. The C is the value of the central element. Okay, in this affine picture, you have this central element. The action is scalar.
But But, so right here, you have you're going from G bundles on this elliptic curve with this condition on C.
So you have this condition, yes, and
And now you have an epsilon down here. So there's
Yes,
a relationship between
the epsilon is the Q. I don't understand the
where
question.
is it, upstairs?
It does not depend. It does not appear here. No, it's like when you look at its usual picture at root of unity, the picture depends on the classical Lie group. It does not depend on the root of unity, which is something quite surprising, but it's like this. And this is exactly what we have. You see, this object here is a classical object. It's some twisted conjugacy classes of an object which is classical. So it should not depend on the root of unity. In fact, it's good that it does not depend, because it is really what happens in the finite dimensional case. Yeah.
So in the finite dimensional case, you get the actual algebras above a central character are isomorphic in the same leaf. But here is that there's no analog of that. You just get some representations of the same.
As the algebra. Probably we can expect this, but the point is that it's infinite dimensional of it. So we
that was going to be my other question. I mean, how infinite dimensional?
It's graded with finite. So it's not very bad in the sense that there is some natural grading, but still we cannot use the theory of Azumaya algebras and so on. No. So there are open questions. We should develop at some point a theory of graded Azumaya algebra for this. It's a kind of toy example for this. But so I'm afraid I cannot say now. Yeah.
What do you mean by up to a covering?
It means that because it's infinite dimensional, it's the same that we have here. Generically, of course this is generic, for a central character there will be several a finite number, but several equivalent classes of representation. So this is what we mean here. So in fact, for example, what we expect is, in this case, where the action of E0 is nilpotent, there will be a head of the representation, which is a module for this subalgebra. And we expect that this covering can be understood by looking at the structure of the representation for this subalgebra, for the part of the representation which is at the top.
Bound on how many things can be in a finite?
Oh yes, I do not have it in mind, but yes, we can say it. Of course, there are many questions for this. I do not say that it's a complete picture. I hope it's a bit more than what is known, but there are many questions in this direction.
Any other questions or comments? If not, let's thank the speaker again.